So the feeling or the sentiment is, at least online, that the population is fractured in terms of their support of the war.
Yes,
which is not uncommon with countries at war. I mean, America, Vietnam, right? It was probably divided.
Well, even in an invasion, you have to remember this is a country which, as a polity, like was very torn apart. Like, it had a significant portion of their population which spoke Russian, had affinity for Russia. That's largely the part that Russia kind of controls right now.
Donbass
but then
region,
you also have the Donbass region. You're right, the Donetsk. But also you have this new Ukrainian identity, which has really emerged very distinct from how it used to be in the Soviet times and others. So anyway, it's actually fascinating. No, I've never been to Ukraine. I've been to all around Ukraine, but never actually
Ukraine is awesome.
Ukraine.
Like, Kiev is awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you go?
We went during the last war.
Which one?
The Crimea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So 2013?
I don't know if it was that far, something like that. But it was like, I knew something was up because I got an email from Expedia, and they were like, by the way, it was something like, would you like to rent a car for your trip? By the way, this is an active war zone. Be safe.
But no,
it's cool that you went.
We were there, and it was unbelievable. Food was amazing.
I've got nothing
culture,
against Ukraine,
party,
or
beautiful people.
Ukrainians.
The food was incredible.
Food was incredible.
Food was incredible. Yeah,
I don't.
Prostitutes were just so it's just incredible. Like, the girl I saw at the
that's
strip
another
club.
sad part of it.
What is that?
Just the number of Ukrainian women who apparently are being human trafficked all over Europe. Apparently, it's a disaster. Like, all over Hungary, Vienna, all in terms of prostitution. They're being totally taken.
We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. It's easier with the retards to be
Listen, that's fucking horrible.
Yeah. But these were in Ukraine.
Do you know how fucking miserable those people in those countries they're going to are going to be? Those people are going to be fucking furious. Because I saw a girl who had areolas like church wafers, dude. They were the whitest areolas I've ever seen in my entire life. And I had to go to 4 different ATMs to get enough money I could pay for it. No, but salute to her, man. You know, shout out Zelensky. Anyway, okay, so it seems like there's waning support. It seems like there's waning support because they're all in the strip club with the white nipple chick. 18 to 25.
No, they're gone,
strip club,
they're gone.
bro.
Yeah, or they want to leave. No, so
I had
anyway,
to fake an orgasm with
it's a problem. So I
had to fake an orgasm because I had sex once, and then my boy had a girl, and then he had sex, and then he went back for number 2, and I'm just sitting on the couch with this poor girl. I don't want to hurt her feelings, so I take her back, and I got the udon noodle. My shit is not even close to hard, and then I just kind of pumped away for a little bit, and then I was like, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire.
a ceasefire Ukrainians can support.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So you were saying.
Okay. So in this meeting,
also been to Russian strippers too. Okay. I didn't do anything. Didn't touch them at all.
Right.
Just want to let
Makes
you know.
Sense.
Yeah.
Well, you probably should. You should.
I
say
wouldn't.
It. All right. So what we have in this meeting is not only all of this beef around conscription, but really what happened is that Vance started to get very frustrated, and he was like, "You come here to the Oval Office of the United States. You disrespect this office."
Yeah.
The worst mistake Zelensky made is that as Trump is getting furious,
this is the line.
This was the line. Yeah. He's like, you have no cards. You have. You remember this?
The line to
what do
me
you think?
was the line to me that ended it was. You don't have to worry now, but
the
in
ocean.
the future, you have an ocean, so you don't have to worry now, but in the future, you will worry, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. He was like, don't tell us what to be afraid of. I mean, that's this is Trump. Like, Trump is not only transaction, it's about respect. Apparently, they told Zelensky to wear a suit before he came, and he didn't
Zelensky
decided not to.
And so he's
Trump called him out. Did you see Trump?
Yeah, he goes, oh, you're dressed. What did he say? He's like, you dressed up. You dressed up.
Yeah, it was fantastic. But that line to me is where he lost everything.
Absolutely.
Because you're threatening. He's basically acting.
I mean, he's been acting this way for 3 years. That's the shocking part of it. Is he has this false. Look, I mean, this is where I'm going to put my own bias on the table. Let's look at all of the arguments for supporting Ukraine. Number one is that we need to defend NATO, and you're like, okay, well, Ukraine's not in NATO.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. 2, we need to defend democracy. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a democracy in the way that any corrupt Eastern European country is. Zelensky's canceled elections. Their parliament or their constitution says they can't even hold an election during during wartime. He has banned opposition parties, censored the media. I mean, it doesn't look that democratic to me. And actually, one of the core demands of the United States is like, hey, you need to hold an election. And he's like, no, we can't do that.
Can't
He's like, we
possibly
can't
do
have that
Yeah.
until even in his interview on Fox News afterwards, they're like, would you resign? He's like, that is up to Ukrainians. I'm like, how? They can't vote, dude. Yeah, it's like, how does that work?
Yeah.
3 was, okay, and this is the most sinister and the disgusting one, is, well, we need to support Ukraine because we're weakening Russia, which means what? Which is that we are forcing the Russians to pour millions of men into Ukraine and kill as many Russians as possible. And somehow that's in the national interest of the United States, is that we're weakening Russia and we're making their economy poorer. Here's the thing. Russia's not like here. It's also not a democracy in a sense. They don't give a shit about a million guys who get killed. Go look at their history. What always happens? The war's a disaster. It's a total shit show. They make up for it with the vast, population that they have. They pour as many people in there very inefficiently. They kill a shit ton. And for some reason, the population, I mean, they don't love it, but they're not rioting in the streets in the way that, in America. Yeah, it's like, dude, it's part of their lore. Like in the Soviet Union, they lost almost 20% of their population. That's a foundational myth of their country.
We went to Russia as well. We did comedy, and we did comedy in Russia. Not what
that actually must be hard.
What we did in Ukraine, and so basically, when I was asking them about this, and I think that what they have culturally is a lower expectation of happiness.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And the advantage of that is there's like a suffering built into the culture.
It's in their story.
Yeah.
Like their story going back to the 1600s is just invasion, is projection. All of Russian national security policy, all the way back to the time of the Tsars, is what? Defense through depth, is vastness.
Yeah.
Our population, we conquer as much as we can, force the population to come through. I mean, they've had horrible episodes. They were conquered by the Mongols that went through and devastated all the way up to Kiev. I mean, obviously invaded by the Nazis, invaded by Napoleon. Their strength is their vastness, is their population, and their just capacity for suffering. The Chinese have very similar.
Capacity for suffering is huge.
Absolutely.
It's built into the culture. It's built into their literature. There is this understanding that one does suffer. And and something very powerful about that, and I think this is something that like Americans maybe do not have, right?
Not at all.
Since we haven't seen war on our front lines. And I'm talking about actual war since the Civil War.
Oh, yeah. That's the closest we ever came. And remember, what was that? 2% of the U.S. population was killed. Remember, they got 20% of their population that was killed. They had general orders during Stalin, the not one step back policy. Stalin's son was captured and he threw his daughter-in-law in prison because they said any person who gets captured, your whole family is going to the gulag. That is the DNA of the Russian state.
I don't know if this is like a benefit to this, but what happens when 20% of your population dies and it's men is that any man that's alive
is like an absolute
has 6 women.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is why there was no standard for like not being an alcoholic or not being a piece of shit.
That's interesting. Yeah, and that's true.
It literally, because if you had a cock that worked, that was the only way to continue procreating. And I spoke to a guy who was like taking us around Ukraine. He was like essentially our fixer right there. And that's what he does. He like takes people around these places where you might feel a little uncomfortable. And he's like, yeah, there was a time where like 6 is an understatement. You could have 12 different girls. If you had a job, you could pay the bills and you could feed them, and the girls had to kind of put up with it. Now they get upset with that. So what happens when they get upset about it? There is a sexual revolution because you have to compete for the guy. You're not in the position to be like, yo, I'm keeping my pussy tight because 7 other girls are like, I'll open it up for whatever. So now you have this like, 20% of the guys die, but the guys who are alive are like, it's party time.
Not even 20% of the guys.
They just
war was probably only women, right?
Dude,
men, right?
They just lived through the worst conflict. I actually read a book about what Moscow was like when they thought the Nazis were about to come. And it was the most debaucherous like party that the Moscow apparently had ever seen. Like people were just housing vodka, like having sex in stairwells, and
they were they were excited for it?
There was just like, this is it.
They're about to die. So
we're all about to
whatever
die.
We gotta do.
And so they just, it was crazy, man. It's the same way if you read about how our guys behaved in London, the airmen in World War II. You're like, yo, dude, this is disgusting.
That's still wild, bro.
You're like, this is bad, man. Like the U.S. Army's like trying to find prophylactic kits that will actually work. The entire Piccadilly Circus was a literal whorehouse for U.S. soldiers. Dude, this is part of the World War II.
Mark's grandma was there. Mark's grandma was there. Dude, they've been doing this nonstop, okay? My grandmother survived World War II.
I want British pounds.
She survived.
British pounds. Barely survived. She was
The
in Piccadilly Circus.
Piccadilly. You ever go see any pictures in Piccadilly?
She was in a bunker. Okay?
Yeah.
No,
She was in a
she wasn't.
bunker.
She had any
Right.
nice stockings. Apparently, that's what they really
Don't
like.
you dare.
Dude,
Dude, you
U.S.
guys are
soldiers
crazy.
were paid.
Fucking
U.S.
hero.
soldiers were paid 5 times the wage of a British soldier at the time. The guys had no chance. The Brits were furious about it. They're like, our invasion is here of these Yanks.
And we're
It's like,
fucking everything.
They're oversexed, overpaid, and over here. That was like a huge thing.
You know what's fucked up is like all my family was over there at that time. The boys.